Hello, this is Tim Langley. I'm your instructor for, I think it's called TS 81. It's geometry, and I am looking forward to helping you be very successful this quarter. My goal is that you all pass the class, do well, learn the geometry, and for most of you, it'll probably mean maybe the last class you need before you can get your high school diploma. So that's my purpose. That's my goal. That's why you're here. I'd say let's get this done. Let me give you a couple of secrets and tips that'll help you be successful. The best practice in learning math, there's two best practices. And when I say best, like this is the best way to do it, okay? And maybe if you haven't been successful in the past, these might be a couple of tips. Number one, taking notes, physically writing things down with your hand, copying the notes from the teacher, taking very careful notes. That's the best practice. Research shows that people who handwrite their notes do better than those who type on laptops and a lot better than those that don't write anything down. So that's number one. I'll constantly remind you to write everything down you'll see on the screen. And then best practice number two, which kind of goes along with that, is when you learn math, it's best to learn it in chunks, a little bit at a time, and then digest it and chew on it for a little while, and then a little bit at a time. There's some research that says that you'll learn math best if you say the teacher talks for 15 minutes, then you stop and you do some practice for a while for 10, 15 minutes. So you're actually getting a chance to chew on it a little while. And then the teacher goes back to teaching. So you'll notice as I teach this class, I will pause or I'll just remind you to stop the recording. If you're listening to this as a recording and do the homework, and then we'll continue from there as soon as you finish the homework. Okay, with that said, you're going to need a notebook with paper, a couple of colors of pen, and if you can get those out and ready, I'm going to have you start with the best practice while I open up my screen and show you my whiteboard. Okay. All right. So it'll take it just a second for the screen to open up here, and then we will get started here in just a moment. But so again, you should have paper, you should have a notebook, and hopefully you can now start seeing what I've got here on the screen here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pen and choose a nice bright color that's going to show up, and then we'll get started. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's go here. All right. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to stop the recording and copy everything that you see on the screen, and then press play again when you've got it all neatly copied in your notebook. Okay. Um, what we're going to do first is we're going to introduce angles and this concept of what an angle is. There's a couple of terms I want you to notice. First, as is kind of self-explanatory, there's something called a line, and you'll notice there's two like arrows here on this line here. Okay, so a line is like a ray that goes on. If you could think of it going on forever, and that's what the arrow indicates. It goes on forever, and to the right, and to the left. Well, that's called a line. Okay, a ray, which I should say is a little bit different. In the sense that it starts at a certain point where this point is here that I'm pointing to on the screen, and then goes on forever in a direction. So a line goes on forever in both directions, whereas a ray, to correct myself, just starts at a certain point and then moves forward. Okay. So that's a line, that's a ray. The biggest thing we're going to be talking about is something called an angle. Okay. And the angle is the distance from this bottom line here, or one line in these two rays here, to another line. Okay, they call that the angle that goes across here. So I'll just draw this with my pen here. That's the angle. And technically, if they're talking about the sides of an angle, you got one side here and one side here. That's a side of this angle. And here's another side of this angle. So they're called sides. And then the vertex, what's called the vertex, is the very point of the angle where they come together. So those are just a couple of terms. You've got sides of the angle and you've got a vertex. Let's take a look at a couple of sizes of angles here. And I know my drawings aren't perfect here, but maybe that'll make us all feel like we're in the same world here. We're not perfect. So my first angle here is a kind of a small angle, and it might be, say, 30 or 40 degrees here. But this first one on the screen here that I've drawn my arrow towards, that's kind of a smaller angle in size. The next angle is a little bit larger, which is that I just drew an arrow towards. And I want you also to notice, so I don't forget to point this out to you, see this little arrow inside of the angles? That's really important to pay attention to. In fact, in your homework, really early on, you'll need to pay really close attention to that, because the direction of that angle tells you, or this arrow here tells you where the angle is from this point here, kind of where my pointer is, to the other part of this, the other side of this. Okay. So for instance, this one here, this third example, it's a bigger angle, and it goes from, just like the arrow has pointed out here, it goes from the bottom of side all the way to the other side. Now, in keeping with this, here's a bigger angle here, this fourth example, and it goes from the bottom, and see how the arrow points, it goes like this, okay? It goes what's called counterclockwise. However, I want you to notice this fourth example up here, this one that is going from all the way around past 180 degrees and this far. So the arrow shows you, that's really important to take a look at that arrow, and here's why. Some people might, like on a quiz or a test or on a homework assignment, just look at this angle here and go, oh, this is just looks like about a 40-degree angle because it's real short here. But actually, it's the distance all the way around. So that's why it's important to point to those focus on those little arrows, okay? Because that'll help you not get lost. All right. Let's go on to the next slide, and let's take a look at the next concept here. So my next concept is, did it open up? Let's see here. Come on. Are you there? Page 1. Okay. Okay. So here's a couple of notes here that I can point out to you guys. I've got a little post-it notes. The size of an angle is not changed when it is turned. Okay, that's the first thing I want you guys to kind of take note of, is that the actual size of it is not necessarily changed just because the angle is turned. Okay, so if I take a look at these angles that are to the right here, let me grab my pen again just to make sure I've got it. Okay, so these angles I'm circling right here on the screen here. Okay, you'll notice they're kind of facing in different directions, but they're about the same size. And so don't let the fact that you'll look in your homework, in your textbook, which is the Contemporaries number power number 4, called Geometry, which you will have already received an email from me telling you to get. But you'll notice these two angles in the circle, they're about the same size, even though they're facing different directions. Likewise, you might notice that their sides are longer. For instance, in this second pair of angles here, again, they're the same angle. It's the same measurement of the same angle here, but you'll notice one of them is larger, and maybe the sides are longer, maybe it just goes longer. That doesn't change the actual angle here. It's the same, looks like it's the same angle. In this case, 90 degrees. Okay, so just because they're turned doesn't mean they're different. Okay, all right. Here's what I want you to do. Make sure you've taken notes on this page carefully, like my little reminder here says in the corner. So that means you should have stopped it. The recording written down was on the page here, and then press play again. Once you have heard this far, you can go to your homework in your textbook. It says complete problems 1 through 10 on page 15 of your number power. That's number power 4 geometry textbook before continuing to the next slide. Remember what I just told you? Teach you for about 10 minutes, stop, do the homework. Okay. So I want you to open up your book to pages 1 through 10. Actually, you just start on page 15, excuse me, and do problems 1 through 10. Then when you're all done with that, come back and press play again, and we'll continue this video. Okay. Let's see if I still got my pen here. Let's talk a little bit about measuring angles. This will be a concept you'll need to understand. There's something called a protractor that maybe you've seen these plastic see-through devices here that are on the screen. And we can call them a protractor, and they're used to measure angles. And usually in a normal geometry class, I would pass out these for each student, and we'd take a look and try to measure some angles in our textbook. But mostly what I want you to do is, for this class, just understand the concept of what it would mean to measure an angle using a protractor. So what I want you to do is I want you to look at this first one here on the far left here, okay, the upper left. I've got an angle here that is, you've got the two red lines that are happening on the screen here, okay? If you look carefully at the numbers here, and I know it's a little bit small, but there's number 10, and then it goes 20, and then it goes 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and then right at the top is 90 degrees here, where I'm just drawing this arrow here. If it was going straight up, that would be 90 degrees. All right. So if I had this arrow, and if I actually had a little white thing like this, I could put that little directional thing here, but sometimes you won't have that. You just have to look at the way the arrow is. And in this case, these two legs of it, it looks like it's about 20 degrees. Okay. And that's what I try to do so if you had a question out of a textbook and they'd ask you, how many degrees is this angle, this first angle here? I'm going to write above it on the screen here what it would actually look like. In algebra, or excuse me, in geometry, we write a little sign here, like this thing here, and that little thing that I just put there, that little circle, is the degrees symbol. Okay, so if you see that, that stands for degrees, and it stands for the size or the measurement of the angle. So for instance, if we look at this, if we go down to the bottom left of the screen here, and what do we have here? If I ask you, how many degrees is the angle in the bottom left? Okay, I know it's a little hard to see, but if I look at these numbers here, okay, I've got 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, it's about 80 degrees. So you might write above this one here that it's 80 degrees, okay? And you can copy that down just as a symbol, practice doing symbols. If I ask you the one in the top right, the protractor, how many degrees is that angle? Now you're going to look at this, and this is where some people get a little bit confused. I want you to watch kind of carefully here, okay? Some people would look at this angle, and that's why it might be kind of important for in some of our drawings for us to have some kind of an arrow there, like this right here, okay? That I'm just drawing here, this little arrow thing to show you, okay, this is the angle that we're measuring here, okay? Because, and here's why it's important. Some people would look at this and go, okay, well, let's just start here and go 10, 20, 30, 45. It's 45 degrees. Well, it's not measuring the space, the shorter angle here. It's not measuring it. It's measuring the bigger angle. And so I'm going to go to 90 degrees, and I've got to go to 100, 110, 120, 130, 135, 140. So it would be about 100 if I'm doing this correctly, just trying to see this 135 degrees, okay? 135. All right, so that would be kind of how you would measure that. And then the one on the bottom left, I think we already took a look at. Okay, having said that, no need to do any homework yet, let's go to our next slide, okay? And we'll be taking some more notes on this next slide here. All right. Okay. For this slide, it's kind of like I'm kind of like quizzing you, okay? And I just want to think if you can figure this out, okay? I want you to look at this this top right hand protractor. If I ask you how many degrees is that angle, okay? Hopefully you can look at that and see if you can figure that out, okay? It would be, the answer should be that it's 20 degrees because it's 10 and then 20 degrees here. You'll notice this arrow here, it says that it's starting from the bottom and going up. It's not starting and going all the way around, okay, like the previous slide we had was, okay? If I ask you the bottom left protractor, how many degrees is that? And could you write it actually as the way it would look? You could look at that, see how the arrow goes. Okay, it goes up, it starts at the bottom and goes straight up. And so that's a 90-degree angle. And so if you wrote it on your paper, and I think I probably should choose a nice brighter color pen just so you can see that, I would write just 90, nice 90, and then that little circle, degrees, okay? All right, this is the point where you're going to complete the homework on page 17 of your textbook before moving on to the next slide. So I want you to open up your textbook or turn to page 17, stop the recording here, do the homework, then come back and I'll hit you with the next couple of concepts. All right, we are jumping into things. We're going to talk about the types of angles. Okay, so again, first thing you should do now that you're listening to me again is look at the screen here, press pause to stop the recording, and copy down the notes. Okay, really carefully, so you've got everything that's on my screen on your screen. Okay. Now we're talking about types of angles, and this will be important to understand, what they're called, the name of those. So we've got the first type of angle here. I'm going to kind of circle it here on the left here, acute angles, okay? And one way to remember acute angles is that they're kind of like shaped like they sound, okay? If I was looking at a little puppy and I said, oh, that's cute. Yeah, it's cute because it's so little, for one thing. It's little, right? So think of the word cute in there as talking about something that's little in a sense. So acute by definition here is it measures more than 0 degrees. So it's not just a straight ray here. It's not just this and then nothing more. So it's more than 0, but it's less than 90. So if this is a 90-degree angle here, okay, and this was 90 degrees straight up, it would be somewhere it would be somewhere less than 90, okay? So it would be something like this, anything like this. These are all acute angles. So again, more than 0, but less than straight up, okay? And that wasn't a perfect straight up, but there you go, okay? Then you got something called right angles, okay? And those are the ones that are straight up, okay? So sometimes you'll hear a math teacher call them a right angle, and this is a right angle. They're 90 degrees, okay? They're straight up and down. Another math term for this, you can write it down, is perpendicular, which means it's straight, it bisects this bottom line here. It's perpendicular, straight up and down, 90 degrees, okay? Now, they're called 90-degree angles, or they're called right angles, but it's the same thing, okay? I also want you to look at this one over here, just because I want to reinforce in your mind the concept that sometimes angles are going to be in different directions. That does not affect the measurement of it. You'll see that this is still 90 degrees. And by the way, whenever you see one that looks like it's 90 degrees and it's got this little box here, that's your math textbook telling you, yeah, this is a 90-degree angle. That little box that I'm kind of filling in white here, that means it's a 90-degree angle or a right angle. Okay. All right. The last type of angle on this slide is going to be what's called an obtuse angle. Obtuse. Doesn't that just sound like something is bigger? Just the word itself. You got acute. Oh, they're smaller than 90. Okay. They're cute, smaller. And obtuse means, if I look at my definition here, it's a measure of more than 90 degrees. Okay. It's going to be more than 90, but less than 180. Okay. And just to be clear in your mind, if I have a line like this, okay, and I have an angle that measures from the top, I mean, the bar all the way to here, that's considered 180 degrees. Okay. So an obtuse angle is okay. If I come back to my first example here, and if I had here, if here's 90 degrees going straight up, okay, if that's 90 here, it's more than 90, but it's less than 180. Okay, less than a straight line here. Okay, so that's the idea here, is that it's over 90 but less than all the way to the line. Okay, so again, you got acute. They're cute because they're smaller in a sense, but they are between 0 and 90. That's key. There's right angles that are just straight up and down, then they're called 90 degree or right, and then you got obtuse, bigger, obtuse, bigger than 90 but smaller than 180. Okay, I'm going to take you to the next slide, and we'll take a look at the next concept here. All right. Now, two more types of angles. Okay, so again, I want you to freeze the screen, write down your notes, press play. Okay, let's continue the last two types of angles. Again, we're continuing types of angles. We've got something called straight angles, and they are what they say they are. They're straight. Okay, so previously on the previous slide, I drew one. It goes straight across here. Okay, it's a straight angle, and it makes sense. That would be called a straight angle. But I want you to notice it measures from one point all the way to the other of the straight line here. So it's called a straight angle. Okay. And that measure, by the way, coincidentally, is 180 degrees, the little circle here, from one side to the other. All right. Second, or the last type of angle is what's called a reflex angle. And a reflex angle measures, listen to this carefully, more than 180 degrees, but less than 360 degrees. Okay. So we've just learned that up here on the right here, that's 180 degrees straight across. 360, if you think about mentally in your mind, 360 days, 365 days in a year, a circle is 360 degrees. You probably vaguely remember that. A circle is 360 degrees. So a reflex, if I come down here to the bottom left screen here where my arrow is pointing, you'll notice that this arrow, if you go straight across here, it goes past 90, past 180, and then it stops down here. Okay. So it's more than 180, just like the definition says here, more than 180, but it's not all the way to 360. It's not a full circle. So for instance, this first one on the left is 214 degrees, okay, approximately. And then the one on the right is about, it's a little hard to read, but that's about 340 degrees. So from here all the way around, not all the way to 360, not quite all the way to 360, it goes that far. So it's 340 degrees. By the way, how many degrees are left? Okay, 40, 50, 60. Those 20 degrees, it falls 20 degrees short of being 360. Okay. All right. I want you now to complete your homework on page 19 before continuing to the next slide. So go ahead and stop the video, do the homework on page 19, and then continue. Okay. Well, for now, looks like that's all I've got for you folks for this first lesson. So I will stop the recording, and we've got through the first 19 pages of our text. And I hope you guys understand everything I've taught you. If you have questions, you're certainly welcome to send me an email or come to one of my live sessions. So you have a fantastic evening or afternoon, and I will pause my recording.